Thank you very much for that. All right. So I need my weapons of mass destruction. All right. So there's one. Okay, so thanks all of you for coming. So as I've just said, this is the last of our lectures this year, but we'll be back next year. So, probably. Right, so usually I give an introduction. Today I'm not going to give an introduction because I found a movie clip that gives the introduction for me. At the beginning of A Beautiful Mind, there's the perfect introduction for this presentation, so let's just...
Mathematicians won the war. Mathematicians broke the Japanese codes and built the A-bomb. Mathematicians, like you.
Like you? I don't know. Russell Crowe somewhere there in the background, you know. He knows what it's all about. So he's talking about mathematicians contributing significantly to the war, and it's the Second World War here. And he mentions code breaking, and he mentions building the atom bomb. I'm going to touch upon all those things. Actually, I had great plans for this. Well, just see what happens, okay? Just see what happens. Okay, last year, I already touched on this. Was anybody here last year for the Archimedes lecture? Okay, yep. So Archimedes, of course, famous mathematician, engineer, you know, a couple of thousand years ago. One of the things he's really famous for is being instrumental in defeating the Roman fleet and army when they were besieging his hometown, Syracuse. Well, at least for a while. Eventually, they overran it anyway. But he was quite instrumental in keeping them at bay for a long time. And the way he did this was apply his mathematical knowledge to build these ingenious war machines. So there's a long history of mathematicians being involved in wars. And usually when they get involved, things get very serious. So for example, I had this slide on last year. It's about the death ray. So there's lots of different things he built. So for example, cranes that lift ships out of the water. But there's also the story of the death ray. And it's basically what you've got in your cars. You've got a parabolic mirror in your cars. There's a light bulb at the focal point of the parabolic mirror. So when you switch on the light, all the light rays go out in different directions. They get reflected off the mirror surface of the mirror. And they all get directed into parallel rays heading off that way. On the other hand, if you just have a mirror like this and hold it into the sun, the rays come in parallel. So then everything goes in reverse and everything gets bundled in this focal point. So there's no light bulb there at the moment, but if you put your finger there, you know, your finger will catch on fire. And you won't be happy. If the Roman warship is there, the Roman warship won't be happy, okay? So that's the principle. How exactly he did it, or whether he did it at all, it's a bit of debate about this, but it's a good story and has been checked, it's plausible. Okay, there's a movie clip that we found that illustrates all this. So at the time there was a cinematographer around and he recorded Archimedes testing out his equipment here.
Avevo sbagliato tutto sulle distanze, ma è riuscito, ecco qua.
Tu sei un folle o uno stregone. Dimmi perché hai bruciato la mia veste.
Ma è meraviglioso, è stupendo. Tu sei il mio esperimento riuscito.
All right, so that worked, right? Well, in fact, I was kind of at a loss on Wednesday what to do. I mean, I had all these great ideas of, you know, you talk about, you know, this or that or the other thing, but always getting very technical. You know, very mathematical. I mean, very exciting mathematically, but would be rather dry. You know? And then, so what am I going to do here? So I looked at all kinds of movie clips about the stuff that I was going to do. There was nothing really fun there. But then I was inspired by Hollywood. You know, Hollywood talks about people like Russell Crowe, and they talk about Archimedes, and it's all pretty dry stuff. So what do they do to spice up things? they put a bit of romance in. That's what I'm going to do today too. So I added another subtitle to this. Weapons of mass destruction always gets the girl. So it's the romance bit. Doesn't really have much to do with what I'm going to talk about. But it's important. Well, it kind of has something to do with it, because it's like one of the messages we're pushing here is, if you're really good at maths, you don't really have any excuse for not being good at anything else. So if you can do maths, you can do anything. You can do music, you can do, If you can't be good at maths. If you're good at maths, you should be able to get your girl, right? So this is your mathematician. This is your mathematician here, right? And this is his girl. A couple of years ago, actually still my girl, somewhere there in the back. So how did he manage to get the girl, right? You can ask a question. Is it the Mitsubishi Magna station wagon there in the background? Is it the hair? Is it the frog t-shirt? Well, all will be answered, right? Okay, so I just give you one way of impressing, my girl. You give her this. She's impressed. Why is she impressed by this? It's not the diamonds. Anybody see why she's impressed? It's not the diamonds. There's 12 diamonds there. 12 is the clue. No? Okay. 3 plus 4 plus 5 is 12. Anything? No? Right. Okay. So I've got this thing here. Okay. So why is she impressed? Okay, we go like this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we go like this. And we've got a mobile right triangle. Okay? So 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared, right? So if you've got a necklace like this, you've got a right angle at all the times. She liked it. At least that's what she said. She probably liked the diamonds. But anyway. Just to make me happy, right? Okay. All right. Okay, fun's over. Now some serious stuff. Okay, so we're going to focus mainly on World War II stuff, and in fact mainly on this machine here. Anybody knows what this is? This is the famous Enigma machine. Central to pretty much everything that was going on in the Second World War, at least on the German side. So they were using this machine to encrypt all their messages. So there were thousands of these things everywhere in the German army, on U-boats. You can see them here in action. So there's some German general in the Second World War. There's one of those machines. So they're encrypting messages at the moment. And it was very essential for the Allies to figure out how this thing works and how to break it. So most of what I'm going to talk about in the following is going to be about breaking this. And mathematicians doing the job. It's actually quite interesting that on the other side, the Germans did not employ mathematicians to do their code breaking. They thought they were too abstract, they couldn't figure it out. And, maybe they lost the war because they didn't. I don't know. I think the A-bomb would have done it anyway. Right, so let's get going. I have to tell you a little bit about encrypting messages. So it's a long history. I mean, the need for something like this has been around for a long time, obviously. You've got two parties who want to communicate over a distance with each other, and you don't want anybody in between to read your messages, right? Lots of different ways of doing it. One really popular one is something called a substitution cipher. So what you do is you just put down an alphabet, whatever you're using, put down the alphabet again underneath, jumble up, and then you use this correspondence that you've established here, A to E, B, to encrypt messages. So what do? So let's just encrypt a message with this. So here's maths. When we encrypt this, what do? We take M, look where it is, underneath an O, so we turn the M into an O. Then the A turns into E, the T turns into P, the H turns into a Q, and the S stays unchanged. So that's what you get. Right? So you're the person who wants to transmit maths. So you've got now OEPQS. You write this on a piece of paper, put it in the mail, and the evil postman, right, when he opens the letter, can't read this now, can't make any sense of it. On the other hand, Marty, who I sent it to, he has this strip of paper up here, and he can go in reverse, right? So he can make sense of this. He just says, where's O here at the bottom? O is M, right? E is, well, up here, so it corresponds to A, and he can reconstruct maths. So he's another part of the message here, encrypted, UATLS. Let's have a look. U, where's U here? So that corresponds to an R, right? A, who sees an A? What does it correspond to? U, yeah. And then, who can tell me what that decrypts to? Rules, that's right. So maths, rules. Okay, well. Okay, so this thing has been around for ages. So Julius Caesar used something like this. Mary, Queen of Scots, used something like this. She got beheaded. Had something to do with this. We'll get to this in a second. So you can make it a little bit harder. So instead of having the second line being the same alphabet, what you do is use different symbols. So this is like Dancing Man here. This is from a very famous story. The Mystery of the Dancing Man is a Sherlock Holmes story, where Sherlock Holmes gets a message like this, or a couple of messages, made up of these dancing men, and he has to make sense of them. There's a woman in there, but he's not interested in the woman. Just to tell you, her name is Elsie. So I've got some movie clips here, which tell you a little bit of what's going on. That's Elsie. It's the only time you will see her. There's Sherlock Holmes.
It is a considerable challenge.
Right. Okay, so does anybody know what he's doing here? There are a lot of E's here. Why does he put a lot of E's here? So you suspect Elsie somewhere in the text there. So he puts lots of E's there, and then it seems like there's two E's just the right distance apart, so he puts ELS in there, and then, does something. So does anybody know what he's doing here?
Decoding.
Well, let's just ask them.
But how did you break the code?
Well, you see, the rules which guide us in deciphering all secret writing depend on the fact that E is the most common letter in the English language. So you see, we were very fortunate that Mrs. Cupid's...
Whatever. By the way, this is Dr. Watson. He didn't have a clue of what was going on, but now he's pretending he knows everything. Right? There's just Holmes there in the background and smoking his own. Okay, so what he's saying is, if you look at the English language, if you look at all texts, and you just count, well, what percentage of letters in a text usually is an E or a Z or whatever, you can actually come up with this graph here, which tells you that the letter that comes up most is an E, and that's followed by an A or a T, right? And it's followed by something else, and I mean there's very infrequent ones, and you know that, X that hardly ever comes up, Z hardly ever comes up. And you can use this sort of thing to attack a cipher like this. So how would you do this? How would you do it? Well, you just write down all the symbols that you can see, right? And just see, well, which one of those symbols comes up most, right? Which one comes up most? Well, that should be the E, right? So in this case, that's the E here, this man, that's the E. So you write down all the symbols, how many come up, that's the E. And then in his case, he finds the E like five apart, so he thinks that's Elsie, and if you know that's Elsie, so if you have this one and that one, and you have the bits in between, then you can start guessing other letters, and you can fill in the rest. And it's actually quite easy to do this. So if you look at frequency analysis of ciphers on the web, there's tools that allow you to do this sort of thing automatically, and will decipher things for you. So enciphering things in this way is actually not a very good idea if you're dealing with an adversary who knows anything. And in fact, you know, Mary, Queen of Scots, got beheaded just because she used a cipher like that, and she had an enemy who knew what it was doing. So she was communicating with one of her co-conspirators, and the message got intercepted, was enciphered in a way like this. They cracked it and chopped off her head. Or maybe she didn't, and they just made it up and chopped off her head anyway, because that's what they wanted to do. I don't know. Actually, I couldn't find the message anywhere, right? So that's the E here. So it's the E going all the way through this text. And actually, I just made this up here. There's a special font that you can download. So you can actually write with Dancing Man if you want to. So that's Holmes here at the beginning. That's Holmes. And that's the E in Holmes. Okay, so you need something stronger, right? So obviously the Germans were not going to use this. They actually knew this. Although they didn't hire mathematicians, they knew this is not strong enough. So they wanted real secrets. And they came up with this. Now, for lectures like this, it would be really good to have a machine, like an Enigma machine, right? So I could show it to you. And Marty and me, well, we thought, yeah, we're going to get one. Right. So every once in a while, they come up on eBay, and we got in first, right? We got the first bid in. How much did we put in? Maybe $1,000? Yeah, a few thousand. Anyway, it's 4 days to go. It's up to 11,000 euros. We're no longer bidding, right? I think eventually it went for 40,000 euros. So these things get quite expensive. Although there were thousands of them around in the Second World War, you know, there's only a few who survived, or a couple of hundred anyway, but still this thing is incredibly expensive. All right, anyway, let's have a really, really close look at this. You can get pretty close to perfect here. There's simulators on the web that are, I mean, functionally just as good as the real thing, maybe even better, right? So this, for example, is a screenshot of a simulator for Windows, and this is one for Macintosh. So, yeah, take your pick. So you can just download this for free, right? It doesn't cost you 40,000 euro. Works exactly the same way, never fails, right? You don't have to worry about spare parts. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Yeah, what is this? Well, it looks like a glorified typewriter, right? So you've got keys here that you can type with. So that's the keys. Yeah? And then you've got letters up here, so they can be changed to any 3-letter combination. And in a second, we'll see that if I press one of those keys, these various things light up. And then we still got this part here, which looks like one of those old telephone exchanges. So you can connect letters up any way you want. So for example, here the W is connected with a U, and the K is connected with a... So it can be done in any way you want. And anytime you see something different, this machine does something completely different. Right? So if I change the plugs, the machine will do something different. If I change this setting here, the machine will do something completely different. Okay, let's just go. Right? So we set it up in some way. There's the plugs. There we've got AAA, kind of the default setting. Now we're going to just type in A, B, C, D and see what happens. So the A turns into B, ciphertext. B turns into J, C turns into E, D. So it's all completely different. That's good. And also up here, that counter kind of goes up. Every time you push a button, this counter goes up. Right? So what that means is, since it's different, every time you press a button, you do a different sort of encryption. Right? So just think of this correspondence that we had at the beginning, right? A really, really simple one. Basically, every time you press a button here, you use a different sort of correspondence to make your replacement, to turn A into B. You use a different sort of jumbling than B to J, and so on. Okay, now let's just press K repeatedly, see what happens, right? If you do one of those primitive ciphers, every K turns into the same symbol, same dancing man, right? What happens if I just press K repeatedly with something like this? Okay, let's see what happens. Does anything happen? So it's all different letters. Okay, there's something else happening up there. Getting close to W, see what happens at W? The next one flipped over. And I just keep on going, and you'll actually see when we reach W again, that next wheel is going to be kicked again, it's going to go to C. So we're going to get close to W. There, moved again. And it will keep on going like this. So if you just press buttons, any buttons whatsoever, what you'll eventually do is go through all possible combinations, 3-letter combinations here, as you're encrypting stuff. So there's a lot of them. All right. Now let's open up the thing. So there's a flap that comes open. When you open it up, you can look inside. And you can see the letters here. They really come from 3 rotors. So there's 3 rotors that sit in this machine. And what are the rotors? Well, the rotors have 26 contacts for the 26 letters on one side, 26 on the other side. So there might be the A might be my thumb, and the A on the other side is my thumb too. But they're not connected in between straight through. There's like wiring in between that's completely like spaghetti, like all over the place. Right? So the A might go to the E, makes one of those complicated substitutions. And the same with another rotor, but different sort of wiring, different spaghetti again. Okay, so you can take out, in the simulator, you can take out one of those wheels. Put it in here, put it there, replace it by a different wheel, or that wheel there. Now you can close the machine again and you've got a completely different kind of setup, right? So it looks the same, AAE, but we're using completely different rotors. So the rotors can be put in any way you want. You've got a supply of 5 of them. It gets very complicated. So you have to set up the machine. We'll just see in a second from a movie. There's a lot of different options, and then you still got this one, right? So just plugging these things around will change things too. It gets very complicated. All right, let's just say it's complicated. Let's encrypt maths. Okay, so everybody who's dealing with these sorts of things has a machine like this. So maybe Marty has one, I have one, or you all have one, right? You're all Germans. Just imagine. I don't have to imagine anything. I am German. Okay, so we all have this machine, and on a certain day, everybody set the thing up the same way, right? So maybe on day 0, we've got it all set up, this way. So all A's up there, and the plugs are in this way. Now we're just going to type in maths and record what's happening, and what is recorded is actually being printed down here. So let's type maths. So M turns into D, A turns into D, T turns into H turns into K, and then this, okay? And that's our cipher message, okay? And what I'll now do is I'll just reset this thing here, back to the beginning. And now to decrypt this is very easy, it's very elegant, the whole thing. It's very elegant. What you do is you just take this and feed it into the machine. Right? So we've all have it set up the same way. I have it set up as AAA, Marty has it set up as AAA. I punch in maths, out comes this. Now I send this to Marty, DDHKB, and what he does is he just punches DDHKB into his machine, and let's just see what happens. So we just punched in. Same setting as before. Okay, so let's see, is it coming? Yeah, there we go. D, H, K, B. So that's really elegant, right? So the maths comes out. You don't have to muck around with this thing. The same setting will turn plaintext into ciphertext, and that ciphertext back into plaintext. That's really nice. Okay, so I've got like a movie clip here where some people are actually working on this. This is Kate Winslet, and the other guy, well, my girl seemed to recognize him, but I didn't recognize him, if you do. So on a certain day, right, so let's, for example, Thursday, the 17th of April, 1943, everybody got instructions how to set up their machines. So the rotor order would be you take rotor number 3 and put it on the left side. You take rotor number 5, you put it right next to this one, and then rotor number 4. So that's the order of the rotors in which you put it in the machine. Then you've got the plugs, how you do the telephone exchange. and then you've got the rotor setting, it's this 3-letter combination. That sets up everything. So everybody on that day is agreed on this sort of thing, okay? And let's just see how they set it up now.
Right, April 17th, rotor order.
3, 5, 4.
3, 5, 4.
A-O-E-M.
The current passes from the keyboard to the lamps by way of the rotors and the plugs. And every time you press a key, it changes the path of the current. Press the same key 10 times, it comes out 10 different ways in the lamp board. You never know which letters will light up. It's simply brilliant.
Do you see the look? Do you see the look?
This is key X-A-T.
Ready?
Ready?
Ready? He married her at the end. But actually, I mean, he's the mathematician, but actually it turns out she's just as smart as him. So we could also say the mathematician gets the boy, right? So it's actually going both ways this way. He just doesn't know. All right. Now we have to have a really, really close look at what's really happening here, okay? So there's a diagram of the machine. So buckle your seatbelts. Everybody buckled? All right, hold your breath. It's going to take a while, don't hold your breath. Okay, so what are the components here? We've got the rotors. We've got the rotors here. There's 1, 2, 3 rotors. We've got the keyboard. We've got the keyboard and the lamps. The lamps and the keyboard are actually kind of in the same place. They're doing the same thing in some way. And that is the plug board. Okay, let's just press a key, okay, and see what the signal now does. So that when you press the A, the signal starts traveling as an A to the A position on the plug board. There's nothing plugged in here, so it stays in A and just keeps on traveling. So it hits the first rotor. The first rotor, remember, spaghetti inside, turns the A into something else. Maybe that's the way it turns things into something else. So maybe it turns into E, okay? So it comes out as an E, goes into the next order, spaghetti, right? Turns into something else, maybe Q. Okay, next rotor, spaghetti again, maybe E or something, yeah? Then into this one here, again, spaghetti, something else. Then it goes all the way through the rotors again, all the way back, and comes out as an F, okay? So it starts out as an A, gets mucked up, 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 comes out as an F. Goes down here. Now, in the F, there's actually something plugged in here. The F is connected to a D, which means that at this point, the signal turns into a D. And then it goes back to the key or to the lamp, and it lights up. So it's complicated, right? So it's complicated. Is it complicated? Nah, piece of cake, right? Okay, now, one thing you can see from this diagram is actually, well, if you press this key here, what's going to happen? Which light is going to light up? A, that's right. Because what happens when you press this key is that the red line, we're just going in opposite direction, right? We're just going in opposite direction, and spaghetti, spaghetti out, you know, and back to A. So and that's exactly what we've seen before, right? You put the plain text in a certain setting, get ciphertext out. In the same setting, put the ciphertext in, you get plain text out. So if this is plain text, this is ciphertext. If this is ciphertext, that comes out again. Now this is the really elegant part. That's kind of the explanation for how it happens. But you can actually find a flaw in this. So we're going to have a look at this now, and we're going to try and find a flaw in the Enigma machine that's based on this property here. So what this means is that when you punch a button here, when you punch a key, the light that can light up is never going to be the light that's associated with this. So if you punch a B, the B is never going to light up. There's always going to be two different ends to this path, right? Two different ones. Can't be the same one. There's going to be two different ends. So A turns into D. B turns into maybe E. C turns into something else. C can never turn into itself. C can never be encrypted in itself. And that's a serious flaw, that's a serious shortcoming of this machine. Doesn't sound so terrible, but I'll show you in a second how this can be exploited. So letters can never left unchanged. And let's just look at our maths from before. So we've got maths here, and we decrypted, enciphered this. And let's just see, M doesn't get encrypted into that, A doesn't get encrypted into this, T doesn't get encrypted into this, H not in this, S not in that. Right? Okay, so how do you use this now? So how did the allies use this flaw? Well, let's say we intercept the message from a weather station, right, in Germany. They all use the enigmas, right? So that might be the thing that they intercept. Now, what do you expect to find in a message from a weather station? You expect to find something about the weather, right? So the German word for weather is Wetter, and if you've learned German in school, you know that German words are usually very long. So weather forecast is actually one word. It is Wettervorhersage. It goes on forever. Okay, you probably have Wettervorhersage somewhere in there. Let's just go with weather, okay? Let's just go with weather. So we suspect that there's weather somewhere in there, okay? So weather somewhere in there. Okay, well, let's have a look. So it could be that W turns into this, E turns into that, so maybe they start with wetter. Could be, you know? Is that possible? Why not? Ah, spotted it, right? So the T goes into the T, so no, can't be that, right? So what do we do next? What do we do next? We just shift it over, right? So we shift it over. And then, does this work? No, there's a T and a T. Can't be that one here. What about this one? No, there's an E. No, can't be that one. No, oh, too fast. Okay, that doesn't work either. What about this one? No. What about this one? No. What about this one? Tricked you, huh? You thought I would put it on the last one. No, I didn't. Okay, so if you compare, W goes into E, E goes into T, T goes into R, T goes into Z, E goes into Y, and R goes into X. So that's a possible encryption. That could be, right? That could be. And if you actually use the whole thing Wettervorhersage, then, you know, it gets even easier to spot these things. Right? So the longer words you have that you can be absolutely sure about that are in a message, the easier it is to spot them in messages like this. Okay, so how would you then actually use a correspondence like this? So you can maybe you're absolutely sure that Wetter corresponds to E, T, R, Z, Y, X. What does it mean? Well, what it means is that there's a way to set up the Enigma machine, and you've captured one. Let's say you have one, right? So what do you get an Enigma machine? Well, you go to a German outpost, hit them over the head, right? Take the Enigma machine and go back, right? So you've got an Enigma machine. It's as easy as that, right? So you've got an Enigma machine, and you know, there's one way of setting this thing up so that when I type Wetter, this comes out, right? So one idea would be, well, I'd just try everything, right? Just try everything. All possible position. For all possible position, I type in Wetter. If E, T, R, Z, Y, X comes out, then I've probably found, you know, what I'm looking for, and I can decrypt the rest of the text. There's one slight problem with this. Let's have a look how many positions you have to check. Okay, so at the beginning of the war, they actually didn't use 5 rotors, they only used 3 rotors. Okay, now these 3 rotors you can put into the machine any way you want. There's 6 different ways of doing this, 6 different ways of putting this in order. Then, to choose your letters here, you've got 26 possibilities here, 26 here, and 26 there. So that gives a total, just to put in the rotors, of 26 times 26 times 26 times 6 is 105,000 different possibilities. But that's not the end, right? Because you also got lots and lots of different ways of plugging these things in. So at the beginning of the war, they used 7 of these connections. So there's a formula for this. How many different ways can you put the plugs in? What do you think? 2? 3? It's a few more. That, right? Right. And now what's the total, the different position you can set up this thing in? We have to multiply this number by that. And what you get is 10 to the power of 17. Right? So you think you're all right because you hit that other guy over the head and you've got your Enigma machine, right? And you think you're all right because you've got the Wetter and this, the one happening. But now there's no way you're going to try all these 10 to the 17 possibilities. And things actually got worse during the war. You've seen before I've had like 5 rotors to choose from, right? So at some point they actually introduced 5 rotors. There's still only 3 going in, but now you can choose from 5 to put up stuff, and then actually the 6 turns into a 60, so it makes this number bigger. And they also used, instead of 7 connections, 10. That makes this number bigger by a factor of 100. And then, well, that number is, again, this multiplied by that. So it's 10 to the power of 20. And if you've been to the last talk that I gave, that's more than the position of a Rubik's Cube. Right? So it's bad. So what do you do? What do you do? What do you do?
I once tried to count them all.
Pick a shape.
What?
Pick a shape. An animal, anything.
Okay. An umbrella.
Do you all see umbrella? Yeah, okay. What is he? Do you know what he is? He's a mathematician. So it's a similar sort of problem, right? You've got these gazillions of stars up there, and you want to find some way in, right? So you want to find some way in, you want to find some pattern, you know. Mathematicians are actually pretty good at this sort of stuff, right? And at least the allies recognized it and employed, like, all of them, well, the best anyway, to get to grips with this seemingly impossible problem. Okay, so you need a mathematician. Well, it's actually this guy who started it all. He's a Polish mathematician, and it's a pre-war, 1930 kind of. 1930, the Polish army was very interested in reading German ciphertext. Well, for obvious reasons, they got invaded first, right? So what's happening here? Actually, I had a whole section on this, and it was getting very complicated. I was trying to explain it to my girl yesterday, and my girl is smarter than me, and she couldn't understand. So I had to do some quick surgery this morning. So I took all this out. But anyway, I'm going to tell you about it because I mean, this guy really did it all. He did a couple of really amazing things. The first one he did was, they actually didn't send out people to hit some German outpost over the head to get the Enigma machine. They actually reconstructed the spaghetti wiring in the rotors just from intercepting messages and being smart. And basically he did that, right? He did that. It's just crazy. Like we had just had all these possibilities. The possibilities go even up if you don't know how the Enigma machine is wired up. So that's really, really crazy. So the first thing they did was, figure out how these things were wired up. Now the French and the British Secret Service, they tried the same for years and years and years. They didn't get anywhere, right? So why? Because they didn't have any mathematicians. They only got smart once they knew about these guys. So anyway, so the Polish army had hired all these mathematicians, and they had a couple of good ideas to get these things sorted out, and they also had a good way of getting the messages decrypted. So again, on a certain day, right? On a certain day, this is how things are set up. Thursday, the 22nd of October, 1930. You only got 3 rotors. So rotors 2, 1, and 3 are in action. It's set to QED because I say so, and then the plugs are done like this, right? And then, what does he do? Does he actually use our wetter thing, correspondence? No. What he exploits is some other mistakes that are built into, well, they're not built into the Enigma machine. It's also the way the Enigma machine is used. It has changed over the time of the war. I'm not going to go into this because it's really, really complicated. But anyway, there was some procedure that the Germans were using at the beginning of the Second World War that involved taking a 3-letter combination like this, encrypting it twice, and sending this. And it's never a good idea to encrypt things twice, because something you can get out of this is that this letter and that letter have something to do with each other. He somehow exploited this to break the code at this point in time. Then they changed procedures. They got another way in. Then they changed procedures again. They again got it. But then they changed everything to 5 rotors and all this other stuff. And it was just getting too much for them. And also the war was getting closer. So they actually got in touch with people who had a lot more resources. It was the British and the French. So they brought in their experts and they told them everything. So they gave them Enigma machines that worked. And they gave them like all the methods that it worked for them to break into this secret. So they went away, and then they got really serious about cracking the Enigma machine. I'm going to tell you basically what happens after, but it's really these guys who got the foot in, and without them, there would not have been anything that happened later on. All right, so we just go to the stage now where we've got 5 rotors. It's completely out of control, right? And what the Allies succeeded in doing was they built these machines, the Enigma bombs. I'll show you how it works, okay? I'm not, without any comments, we're just going to see what happens, okay? Right, no comment. I'm going to comment on it in a second. So it had rooms full of these things. Okay, so just reset, what are we facing with now, okay? What are we faced with? We're faced with 5 rotors. There's about 1 million different ways in which you can put them in. We've got these plug boards here, wired up. There's this many different ways of doing this. And you've got this idea here. You know, you've got this idea that you should somehow be able to use that correspondence. And that's exactly what they did. And one of the people who was very instrumental in this was Alan Turing. He was like one of the star mathematicians at the time. And he's famous for lots of different things. He's famous for working on this, but he's also famous for, like within computer science, we'll get to this, and he's famous for something else, impressing girls. And boys. Well, we'll get to that too. Okay, so what did he do? What did he do? Well, he actually found a way to check all these possibilities. He found a way to check all of them. But he found it in a very kind of sneaky way. Okay, so this machine, what we've just seen is, there's 3 rows here. They correspond to some rotors. That might be rotor 1, rotor 2, rotor 3. You can see the first one spinning really fast, the second one spins a little bit slower, the third one doesn't spin at all, at least not in the short clip that I showed you, right? What that machine does is, it maybe starts with AAA here. So this is AAA, right? And then in an instant, it checks that if AAA set is set, none of these gazillions of different plug positions are possible. Right? So you have it set to AAA, and the machine, you can see it spinning like really crazy, right? So it kind of goes like this. And that's like 26 times. So it checks for AAA, AAB, AAC, AAD, AAE, and so on. It checks for all of these, that no matter how you put the plugs in, none of these is possible to give this sort of output. How does it possibly do that, right? And they had enough machines set up to check all these possibilities. So they really ran through everything, right? They ran through all possibilities, all possible rotor settings. And for every single rotor settings, they basically excluded all plug settings. So how did they do that? I just want to show you an example of this. So this is actually from a very nice book. I can really recommend this. If you want to read anything about this. Okay. It's our technical guy here. I think we don't have any electricity here. I plugged it in, but I think I had it at general, or maybe. Yeah, good, fantastic. Saved my day. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. Seatbelt still on? All right, here we go. So, what are we going to do? Well, we know that general, and in German it's also general, it's called, if you spell it, it's General. So General turns into L-A-K-N-Q-K-R, right? And now, what I said is, the machine checks every single rotor setting. So it starts for QED, for example. It starts QED, right? So QED. And what I want to show is that QED is not possible, okay? QED is not possible. And when I've showed that, I just move on. Okay, so if it was possible, then L would turn into G at this point of time. Then that counter would move on, and A would go into E with this sort of setting, right? And then the counter would move on, and the K would go into this with this sort of setting. Now what we don't know at all is anything about the plugs. Right? So the signal goes from the keyboard to the plug board, into the machine, through the keyboard, out there. All right. So we want to somehow convince ourselves that no matter what we do here with the keyboard, it's not going to work. So it seems impossible, right? Remember this huge number? This huge number, there's gazillions of different ways of plugging this thing. And how are we going to check all of them? How are we going to make sure that none of them is possible in this particular setting? Okay, here's the way you do it. You actually do it in a mathematical way. Let's just say, where can A go, for example? A goes to the plug board. It could stay A if nothing's plugged in there. It could go to B, it could go to C. But actually, there's just 26 possibilities. Let's just say it goes through as an A. Okay? It goes through as an A. Then it gets to this Enigma machine here, QEE. We know what this one does. We have an Enigma machine, right? So maybe it goes to O. Then it arrives at the plug board as an O. When it exits the plug board, what does this exit as? E, because an E here. Okay? So it's got, if it passes through as an A, there is no choice at this point, it's got to come out as an E. So again, we just start because everybody has to be there. So we just say, well, that's for the A, the plug board does something. It either leaves the A unchanged or it maps it to another character. So let's say it goes through as an A. Everything else can be anything, like B can go to D, B can go to Z, whatever. We're not worried about this at the moment. We're just saying, if the A goes through as an A, what happens then, right? And we're just going to do a chain of conclusions from this. So if it goes through as an A, then it arrives at the machine at a certain setting. We know the setting, we know what comes out as an O. It arrives here, well then it should turn into an E. Let's have a look. Do you see another E here? Do you see another E? Oh yeah, over there is another E here. Huh? So let's go over there and plug that thing in. So that goes in as a E. What does it come out at? Comes out as an O. We already know that. Right? So it comes out as an O. Goes into this machine. We have the machine. We know what happens here. So it comes out as a Q maybe. It goes in here. What does it come out of? Comes out as an N. Right? No other choice. Okay. Do you see another N? Down there. Right? So let's just go in here. As an N, what does it come out of? Q. Right? So we already said N and Q get exchanged. So again. So we go like this. Comes into Q. Goes into the machine. We know the machine. The machine turns into something else. Maybe a G. Then the G can turn into a K. So it comes out as a K. See another K. Okay, over there. Goes in, there's a key. What does it come out with? Okay, G. Okay, good. Let's just stick with that here. Okay. Go back to the beginning. Do you see another A? Down there. So let's go down there. go in, the A goes through as an A, that's our assumption from the beginning, right? So we go through it as an A, and then we have a machine here, and we can check, does this machine turn G into A? In this particular setting, no. What does that mean? That means that A is not mapped to A. And what does that exclude? That excludes gazillions of possibilities in one go, right? So all the different ways of plugging like B into D or wherever it goes, it doesn't matter, right? If A is mapped to itself, you know, that can't happen, right? So in one go, with this sort of kind of logical argument, you've excluded billions, gazillions of possibilities in one go. And that's exactly what the machine does, right? The machine is set up like AAA. And it does this sort of logical argument in a flash, right? It's just wired this way. So it does this in a flash. It does all sorts of things like this, not just one, like gazillions of them. It's a whole avalanche of these sorts of arguments that you can make, and you can exclude everything in just 1 second. And you can see it, the rotors are turning at an amazing speed, right? And it's like less than a second, one revolution. That's like 26 positions like this are checked like this. Like a complicated argument like this is built into the machine. So in one flash, everything is kind of wiped out. It's a very, very elegant kind of thing. Right? So what they don't do is, they don't do all the rotor positions and all the possible plugboard positions. That would be impossible. What they do is, they check all the possible rotor positions, and for the rotor positions they say, well, nothing can work here. Well, you know, it's not directly counting all the plugboard positions, it's saying there's an argument that says you can't do it. Okay, and then when does the machine stop? The machine stops when it can't find a contradiction like this. Right? It finds a possible rotor position, and then there's other methods of checking whether you can actually get something sensible out of this. But that's the gist of it. There's a really nice movie about this, it's Breaking the Code. That's Alan Turing in Breaking the Code, and he tries to explain what's going on here to some person who doesn't know anything, actually.
Look, let me try and explain something. In order to unravel the messages encoded by the Enigma machine, we had to make certain deductions. We had to deduce the position of the machine's rotors for each transmission. Now, in other words, we had to construct a chain of logical deductions for each of the rotor positions. Now, if this chain of deductions led you to a contradiction, that meant you were wrong. And you had to move on to the next rotor position and start all over again, and so on, and so on. It was an impossibly lengthy and laborious task, and we didn't know what to do. And then suddenly, one spring afternoon, just after lunch, I remembered a conversation that I'd had with Wittgenstein. We were discussing an elementary theorem in mathematical logic which states that a contradiction implies any proposition. And I saw immediately, if we could build a machine that embodied this idea, we would have a code-breaking machine with the necessary speed. Now, it would have to be a machine of electrical relays and logical circuits which could sense contradictions, recognize consistencies. Now, if your guess was wrong, electricity would flow through all the related hypotheses and knock them out in a flash. If your guess was right, everything would be consistent. And the electrical current would stop at the correct combination. Our machine will be able to examine thousands of millions of permutations at amazing speed. And with any luck, it would give us the way in. What a moment that was. It was extraordinary. Quite extraordinary.
It's a great movie if you can get hold of it. It's actually not out on DVD. It's really worth watching. All right. No, I'm not going to do this. No. It's not time for this. Just see whether you can find a blooper here. That's from another movie where they show a room full of these machines. See whether. Can anybody see what's wrong here? Anybody? They always get something wrong. Anyway, so this here is basically the program for the machine. So you've got your correspondence vetted to something else, and you have to somehow wire up the machine to do the right thing, right? So you have to tell it some things. It's very flexible to do this. Now, what's wrong here is, you see, this is turning fast, this is turning slow, this is not turning at all. The next set of things, there's actually just the top bit turning, which is wrong, can't be. The bottom bits don't turn at all, but that's movies. You always find mistakes, right? That's one of them. This is actually the start of the modern computer era, this whole thing. So they developed it a little bit further, and they got something out here, it's called Colossus, which they used to break other things. That was actually pretty much a computer, the first computer, so it all started with this sort of stuff. And this is how it gets the girl, okay? It's very important, you have to stop with it.
Look at this. It's a fur coat.
I can see it's a fur coat.
Take it. Go on, look at it. I am going to tell you something extraordinary about this fur coat.
It looks ordinary enough to me.
Define what is meant by a Fibonacci sequence.
A Fibonacci sequence is a sequence of numbers where each is the sum of the previous two. So you start with 1, then 1 plus 1 equals 2, 1 and 2, 3, 2 and 3, 5, 3 and 5,
8, 5 and 8, 13. Good! Well done, full marks. Look at the fur coat. Look at the pattern of the bracts, the leaves. Follow them, spiraling round the cone. 8 lines twisting to the left, 13 lines twisting to the right. The numbers always come from a Fibonacci sequence.
Always?
Always. And it's not just fur coats. The petals of most flowers grow in the same way. Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it is.
And it prompts the age-old question. Is God a mathematician?
I love you, Prof.
Now, there's a bit of a problem with this, in that he was gay. But anyway, you know, I mean, basically it would have worked, you know. It does work. And it was actually true, they didn't just make this up. He was actually also one of the first guys who looked into this really amazing sequence here, how it appears in nature. It appears in nature all over the place. So for example, you've also got it in flowers, and that's like my last hint for you. You mathematicians who want to impress your current love interests. So that's flowers. A lot of the flowers come with petals, with these numbers of petals. So this, for example, a daisy, which has 13. So there's this one here. It's just, I mean, we're here at the museum, then there's the exhibition, and behind that there's gazillions of these, just if you want to pick a couple. So what you usually do is, you go like this, you pick a flower and then you want to figure out whether she loves you or she doesn't, right? So she loves me. She doesn't. She loves me. She doesn't. Now, does she love me when I use something like this? Yes or no? It's an odd number, right? It's an odd number. Means she loves me. If I use this, she loves me too. Let's just have a look at which of these numbers are odd and which ones are even. So there's even, odd, odd, even, odd, odd. So most of these numbers are actually odd numbers, and you get to she loves me if you start with she loves me. So you do on an odd number of petals, she loves me, go for it. You'll end up with she loves me. If you have an even number, you start with she loves me not. And then you end up with she loves me, okay? So it's very important that you start with the right sentence if you are aiming for a certain conclusion, okay? And I mean, you can sell this as destiny, right? So you don't do this by yourself, you do this in front of your love interest, right? So you first count the number of petals, right? And then, depending on what you want to, maybe you want to break up with her, right? Okay, and I think we're pretty much at the end of this lecture, so I hope we'll see you again next year. And maybe just one, if you can't get enough of this stuff, Martin and I were actually organizing something next Thursday. Oh, that wasn't so good. Actually, no, it's October the 21st. So if you're interested in more of this stuff, this is about Martin Gardner, who is one of the most prolific mass popularizers ever. And there's a kind of a worldwide event which happens on his birthday on Thursday, so it's celebrated everywhere all over the world, in New York, in San Francisco, also in Melbourne. So we're hosting the Melbourne event. It's going to be something quite cozy, and we're going to talk about all kinds of fun stuff. So if you're interested in this sort of stuff, come talk to us or go to our website and get in touch with us by email. Anyway, hope you enjoyed all of this. You can unbuckle your seatbelts now.